I'm Kim Weichel. I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and I've been teaching here at Shippensburg University in the psychology department since 1994. So started with a pre-doc internship, and even before that working with substance use, but pre-doc internship in a Veterans Administration hospital. And then after that, worked toward licensure. So I did that through Stevens Mental Health Center in Carlisle. And then once I got my licensure, had some kids, and then once they got older, started a private practice. So the bulk of my private practice is working with folks with serious and persistent mental illness. So schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, some anxiety disorders, borderline personality disorder, that kind of thing. I think the best portrayals, if you will, the best way to understand what's going on with mental illness is through autobiographies. So folks who have written a book about their own experiences with a mental illness so that we can understand from their perspective what they're feeling. So we could talk about that as well. So interestingly, John Nash, the person who the movie A Beautiful Mind is based on, did both, kind of. So he has an autobiography out there. I've not read it. I need to someday, but he is a mathematician, and I'm told that the book has a lot about his game theory, and so it's a little dense going into that, heavy-duty material. The movie, of course, was produced from his book and was a way to have people who might be more into watching movies understand some of the things that he was talking about in the book. But of course, movies, the problem sometimes with movies is that you want to grab the reader. And so there's some tendency to try to sensationalize or maybe exaggerate or those kinds of things so that you grab the reader and keep the viewer and keep the viewer entertained. And so A Beautiful Mind is about John Nash's experiences with schizophrenia. It goes through his life as a mathematics professor, so he had a professorship and a very strong research program, won a lot of notable awards and that sort of thing. So what happens if you've seen the movie is that it's not clear until probably after about half. I don't know. It's been a while since I saw the movie, but not clear in the beginning of the movie that he is experiencing mental illness, and then eventually it comes out that a lot of what he was believing was what we refer to as delusion, one of the symptoms of schizophrenia. So that is portrayed. Hallucination. So in that case, he was seeing whole people, so believing these people existed. Seeing the people interacting with people that didn't exist.
Christ. The prodigal roommate arrives.
Roommate?
What are you doing?
I'm attempting to isolate pattern reoccurrences within periodicals over time. And you?
You talk funny, Mr. Nash.
Do I know you?
My uncle says you're very smart, but not very nice. So I shouldn't pay no mind if you're mean to me.
And who might your uncle be?
The prodigal roommate returns.
Who are you talking to? Tell me who you see.
How do you say Charles Herman in Russian? How do you say it in Russian?
There's no one there, John. There's no one there.
He's right there. He's right there.
Is this what you are, soldier? Some useless ghoul? The local madman? I'm no soldier. You're gonna end up in a cell! Old, worthless, discarded! There's no mission. And while you rock and drool, the world will burn to ashes! You are not real! You are not real! You're still talking to me, soldier! There's no mission! I'm not a soldier! John?
If you want my opinion, I guess, in the movie, I think there are real neat things about it, and then some things that are possibly problematic. But I understand movie producers wanting to grab the viewer, of course. The real nice thing is it takes a strengths-based approach. It really demonstrates John Nash's career, his ability as a mathematician.
Adam Smith said, the best result comes from everyone in the group doing what's best for himself, right? That's what he said, that's right? Incomplete. Incomplete. Okay? Because the best result would come from everyone in the group doing what's best for himself and the group.
You do realize this flies in the face of 150 years of economic theory.
Yes, I do, sir.
That's rather presumptuous, don't you think?
It is, sir.
Well, Mr. Nash, with a breakthrough of this magnitude, I'm confident you will get any placement you like.
Demonstrates the whole life of the person.
Today, we bequeath America's future into your able hands. Welcome to Princeton, gentlemen.
You see, the nightmare of schizophrenia is not knowing what's true. Imagine if you had suddenly learned that the people, the places, the moments most important to you were not gone, not dead, but worse, had never been.
Professor, my name is Thomas King.
Thomas King.
And I'm here to tell you that you're being considered for the Nobel Prize.
My quest has taken me through the physical, the metaphysical, the delusional, and back.
But my impression from clinical experience is that the symptoms were sensationalized. Perhaps not the delusions, but the hallucinations, certainly. So he was seeing whole people holding conversations, believing, that whole systems existed that maybe weren't there. That kind of well-systematized delusion-hallucination combination is pretty rare. So generally, there are auditory hallucinations where people can hear voices, for example. That's the most common hallucination, but not the strong visual hallucinations going with them, or maybe some kind of sketchy kinds of hallucinations. So seeing shapes or that sort of thing, a little more common from people's reports, and so to make a movie that was going to engage people and be able to do the things that movie producers do, like not making it clear that there's mental disorder until halfway through the movie, they probably exaggerated.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that's very sensational, and actually we get it from the news now too, so we don't have to go beyond the evening news for this, but certainly movies can do this, is that we don't hear much about mental illness, or we don't see movies very often where the person is coping really well and successful. That's why I like A Beautiful Mind, right? More often, what we see is violence associated with mental illness, and that scares me for the way that we view mental illness in our society. If all we see is portrayals of mental illness that give a perception of the person being violent or dangerous or that kind of thing, that becomes our perspective on mental illness. So in general psychology, you probably learned about illusory correlation, right? We can believe there's a correlation between mental illness and violence if all we see are the instances of mental illness and violence, and we don't see the times when, for example, persons with mental illness are more likely to be the recipients of violence or aggression than they are to be the perpetrators, if you will. But those don't make movies. Those kinds of accounts don't make movies very often. Or what we can see is an over-victimization, maybe, where the person didn't cope at all with, and so we get a sense that people with mental illness can't cope for themselves and do basic things to keep themselves from being victimized, when really there are a lot of people who are coping quite well with mental illness, having very meaningful lives and interpersonal relationships, but they don't make movies, right? Because that's not going to draw in the viewer. And if you're talking about a fictional book, that's not going to draw in the reader unless you're interested in an autobiography. And so what we're going to see is those kinds of sensationalized accounts that can result in, to use your psychology term, illusory correlation. We believe this is what mental illness is because we're not seeing in the movie the more frequent instances of higher functioning in folks with mental illnesses.